need an update. You need an update. That's why I'm telling you, you need an update. And the hair just had a little less snow at the top too. This was before the doctor told you all was good. So did we. Because he actually ate me. He actually ate me. Instead of being a rabbit. Bride? The bride? City staff and city staff and council. I'm just gonna say, one person can sit on our side. Welcome and good evening, everyone. I like it that everybody's smiling. We'll keep that up. Today is Thursday, May 22nd, and the time is 5 p.m. I will now call to order the meeting of the Victorville City Council and the same council sitting as the Victorville the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, the Southern California Logistic Airport Authority, successor agency to the redevelopment agency, the city as a house, I'm not going to get through it today, the city as a housing asset successor, Joint Powers Finance Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, will you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Godin. Here. Councilmember Irving is absent. Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Here.
Mayor Becerra.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. If you would please stand. Tonight's invocation will be led by our Councilmember Godin, and our pledge will be led by Captain, no, you're not Joe.
No.
Lieutenant. Lieutenant Brown, you would please.
Father, thank you for this opportunity to be able to gather together here. I pray your blessings upon this workshop, and I pray your blessings upon each and every person who worked many hours to provide this information that will be presented tonight. Lord, I pray that you would continue to guide us, direct us, and give us wisdom as we move this city forward. I pray that your hand of provision would go before us and provide a way and prepare the way. We thank you again for this time to gather together. We pray your presence to be with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Go ahead and have you place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, will you please present the agenda and any revisions thereto?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no revisions to the agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. We'll go to public comments. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to item 1, fiscal year 2025-2026 budget workshop. Mr. Metzger, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Good. Just going to see if I can get this queued up. There we go. So again, thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of the council, and certainly welcome to our budget workshop. This is our first, and currently it's our only planned budget workshop, presenting to you a draft of what the budget is anticipated to look like. And this would be for the budget year beginning the 2025 and ending the 2026 fiscal year. And this presentation is for you and the public to get a firsthand view of what staff is proposing as one of your most important policy documents. To review the budget in detail, we have a budget book in front of you, which is a paper version, but we've also created an electronic version as well. So whether you're working from the book or want access or reference to it later, we certainly have it in an electronic format to make it easy for you to review, and it's in a very easy to navigate format. And as we provide this presentation, please know that even as we ultimately approve a budget, the budget is a living document. It's a document that undergoes constant review throughout the year. And so with that said, this document will evolve as the environment around us evolves. And so as we begin, we must recognize our city council first, who we as staff look up to for policy guidance. Because of your focus and support for a strategic plan, your goals and priorities are clear and a foundation for everything that's included in this budget binder we'll talk through today. As you know, the organization is a large, complex, full-service organization. Your support in the current year's reorganization has yielded a 3-member deputy city manager support structure, which has made the organization much more manageable for me as your city manager. Mr. Camargo, Mr. Webb, and Ms. Davidson were there's a duck in the audience. Were hugely instrumental to me in helping shape this proposed budget. And I must thank you all to my executive team for their leadership and support in helping us get to this point. Annually, we have a tremendously large team participate in the development of our budget, which begins immediately following the adoption of our mid-year budget, which, as time flies, it felt like that just happened yesterday, but it was actually a few months ago. And so we've been constantly working towards this presentation with you. And the heaviest of lift is led by members of your finance department. And as I call the name, I'd like to recognize each of the members of the finance department that has actually played a very important role, first starting with your finance director, Ms. Carmen Kuhn. Please stand. Ms. Star Kevanyan, your assistant director of finance. Ms. Rosa Roman, finance analyst. Ms. Amber Darling, a finance analyst. Cheyenne Everett, accountant. Carol Vernon, accountant. Claisha McAwee, finance technician. Jordan Hand, finance technician. Christian Dominguez, finance manager. And our college intern, Devin Bryson. Each of these individuals have worked tirelessly for days, months, endless hours. And so I certainly want to take this opportunity not only to recognize, but thank you all for the hard work that you've put into this document. Thank you. Of course, these folks work closely with a leadership team, as you have illustrated in front of you, and each of the members of your leadership, directors of the organization, have staff that work directly with the members of the finance team to put this document together. So it's a very, very involved process that not only takes a lot of time, but you can only imagine the amount of coordination amongst all the staff. Without the collaborative work culture that we have here at the city, without that, it would certainly make the process that much more difficult to accomplish. And I typically, backing up. I typically start this presentation with the city manager's budget message, and while I realize you don't necessarily have it on the screen, I'll go ahead and read it to you, which is the same as in previous years, which this budget has been prepared relying on all 7 of our adopted multi-year goals and priorities found in our strategic plan as guidance. It is a budget that embraces our organizational values, which include excellent customer service, integrity, accountability, and transparency. With this budget, the city will move closer to achieving its adopted vision. And so with that, that's the message consistent with previous years, but I must add that this budget wasn't an easy budget, largely because of the economic uncertainties that I think we're all hearing about, that we're all facing around us. However, one thing that's actually made it easier for us to carry through is the fiscal prudence we collectively have shown in terms of how we've managed our budget, how we've managed our expenditures over the years. And it's because of the fiscal prudence, which we'll illustrate later in some of the graphics, is really what helps us be able to get through uncertain times such as what we're walking into. Okay, and so the printed version that you have in front of you, I'm told, is the correct version. Okay. Okay, bear with me for just a second. So. Okay, so I'm gonna, if you don't mind, council members, I'm gonna just go through, and if you could walk with me through the paper version, we'll just do that. I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. But I'm gonna move on to slide number 6. Jacob, do you mind seeing if we can figure this out? Thanks. Your call, Madam Mayor. I can keep going if you like. I think the only downside is probably for the viewers online. They're probably not seeing. So if okay, how about 5 minutes? Yeah, please.
At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break, catch up on some IT issues, and then we'll continue in 5 minutes. I don't have a clock here. 5:11 to 5. Thank you very much. 5:16 we'll resume. Thank you. My rollers now without sounding like a little mouse.
And caramel.
And caramel, see. You wouldn't be under doctor care, you said you were.
Yeah, should have been better.
These are my favorite. Still. So can I. That's why I have 2 minutes, yeah, that's what I was gonna. Bob was saying it was. We'll now come back into order. Mr. Metzler, if you'd like to continue?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and apologize for the confusion with the presentation, but I think we're set now. And so continuing on past the last slide, which was the city manager's message, let's just dive right into it. And so this slide is illustrating the citywide budget comparison from what's in the current fiscal year budget and, of course, what's proposed for the 25-26 fiscal year. And what you're seeing, first of all, on the revenue side of the equation, this budget proposes a $376,296,000 revenue budget to be matched up against an expenditure budget of $387,669. And in both of those cases, those are slight increases over the current fiscal year, about 22 million on the revenue side and about 10 million on the expense side. Included within that budget for the upcoming fiscal year is $45 million worth of capital improvements. We like to put on this slide for you just to illustrate some of the complexity of this organization. But first, we account using fund accounting. And this city comprises, in this upcoming budget, 87 total funds. And I think the best way that I've compared it over in previous years has been to think of the city being responsible for affiliated entities or small businesses in the order of 87 different ones of those. And so each of the types of funds that we manage have different rules, different responsibilities. And so we share this with you because, of course, the public is very used to coming to us and perhaps seeing a total expenditure budget of $387 million. And of course, believing that that's a tremendous amount of money. And it is a tremendous amount of money, but it doesn't stretch very far when you stretch it over the 87 funds and you look at each of the 87 funds from a unitary perspective as to responsibility. And so the other thing that we wanted to illustrate, of course, here is the deficit spend that's proposed. And we've gotten used to showing that to you. And while it's effectively the deficit spend relies on unencumbered fund balance to be able to match the equation. And I wanted to talk this through a little bit so that it's kind of understood how this is effectively the most practical way for us to budget is depending upon unencumbered fund balance. And later in this presentation, we're going to work towards getting you comfortable with this concept. But one of the most common contributors to a deficit spend such as this one is capital projects. And so when you take, for example, a major capital improvement, Let's take, for example, and we'll see it later in the presentation, Roy Rogers Road, where we actually have it budgeted in this current fiscal year. It's going to be, like others, a carryover project into the upcoming fiscal year. And if there was revenues generated for that project, the revenues are going to get booked in this current year, but what doesn't get carried forward as a revenue into the future year is that same money. And so effectively that revenue goes into your unencumbered fund balance, but the expense gets carried forward. And so I wanted to share that with you because that's a classic example that happens throughout the budget when we have carryovers to where it's going to depend on revenues earned in prior years or booked in prior years. And so that's why we're routinely seeing deficit spend and the dependency upon unencumbered fund balance to actually balance out the budget. Now, of course, we also project, and you'll see those later in the presentation, our focus on cash flows for the forthcoming, 5-year or for a 5-year period. And so with that, one of the things that we want to do, especially as you're seeing on a single year a deficit spend, we want you also to be able to see that there is sufficient cash available to be able to actually get through those deficit spend years. And so I wanted to highlight that because I don't necessarily want anybody here at this dais or even in the public to be concerned about that type of number because we do have sufficient funds carrying forward to be able to balance that. And so just kind of talking that entire citywide budget through, this slide is actually showing you the types of funds. So in the earlier slide, we mentioned 87 funds throughout the city, and those funds are broken down by fund type. And so the largest of the fund types that we're responsible for are enterprise funds, comprising about 49% of the total budget. And to give you a perspective of what type of enterprise funds we have, if you think about our water district, the water district is an enterprise fund. Our airport operates with enterprise funds. VEMUS, which is your electric and natural gas utility, is an enterprise fund. Solid waste is an enterprise fund depending upon rates it charges to customers, and the same with sanitary sewer fees. And so those would be examples of types of revenues and expenditures that actually get booked as an enterprise fund in that green piece of the pie. Your most discretionary funds by definition are your general fund and your Measure P fund. Those are by definition general funds, and of course combined general fund and Measure P make up the second largest piece of the pie. But we also have special revenue funds, as you'll see on here, and to give you some examples of special revenue fund, the simplest definition of that is revenue funds where the monies generated have to be spent on a very specific purpose. And so a good example is going to be your Measure I or your gas tax funds, where they effectively are generated to be spent on very precise, specific road maintenance related type activities. Assessment district is another example where the money's levied against certain properties for, say, landscaping or maintenance assessment or even drainage assessment. The money's collected for those types of special revenue funds have to be spent for the special purpose. We also serve as a fiduciary where basically we hold money in trust for other organizations, and that would be the fiduciary funds, which would be bond funds or successor agency funds. So that kind of gives you an idea of how we start dividing that pie by fund type. And this breaks it down to share with you or show you revenues and expenditures by category type. And so on the revenue side of the equation, that big number that you saw, the largest revenue component is charges for service, and those would be similar to the charges charged by your enterprise fund. So a charge for service would be your water fees, your sewer fees, your sanitation fees, your electric rates. And I think the interesting thing here to point out, and we call it out because your second largest is the category called taxes. A lot of the public believes that the city operates only on taxes, and that's not true. There's actually a much smaller component of the total revenue that we generate is actually from taxes. And so a lot of the revenue we generate is from actual rates that go through rate studies to determine cost of service before we can actually charge an amount to pay for those costs of services. And so, as we talked about the charges for services, taxes, an example, would be sales tax, would be property tax, assessments. One category that I'll call to your attention here on the revenue side is cost allocation. And what cost allocation is a charge for effectively the internal or central services. So there's a number of services in the city. I think the most classic examples would be the finance department services, the human resources services, the IT services, and partially some of the city managers services, city manager department services, which effectively are providing services to a variety of those enterprise funds. So, and to be fair, and this is where we get economies of scale in terms of being able to share overhead related costs, we actually charge out those costs of services so that the variety of funds can proportionally pay for the central service charges. And this slide is really intended to help speak to slide 6 as it relates to the deficit spend. And so one of the things I wanted to walk through with you here are the bars, the green bars, both light and dark green, representing expenses, the lines actually representing revenues, and just comparing the bars for 2 seconds, and this is really what's contributing to the surplus cash or the unencumbered fund balance buildup. But if you look at the trend dating back to 2021, on the expense side of the equation, if you look at the light green bar and you compare it to the dark green bar, in each of the years from 2021 forward, the dark green bar, which is actual expenditures, is tracking routinely below the budgeted expenses. On top of that, you'll see that while the purple line is the actual revenue line and is tracking less than the budgeted revenue line, what you'll see is that the purple line in all of the years measured here is greater than the top of the dark green bar. And so the difference between the dark green bar and the purple line, if I were to illustrate it that way, is surplus revenue. Basically, that is what gets contributed to the unencumbered fund balance that then gets relied upon to help balance out the budget when it comes to a deficit spend year. And so I wanted to share that with you because it's been a routine for us to be budgeting that way, but I also wanted to share with you that it's very, very common for us to have the revenue still outpacing the actual expenditures. So jumping over to your general fund, this is what is proposed this year for your general fund. And so the total revenue is projected at $108,939,000 to be balanced against $110,497,000 with a deficit of $1,557,000. This is the last year in the loan between VMIS and the general fund, and so we'll do a book entry at sometime in the course of the fiscal year where VMIS will transfer that amount over to the general fund to offset the loan that was made to VMIS. And effectively that gets used to help absorb some of that deficit spend. And so after that adjustment is made, we're still looking at a deficit spend of about $707,000. This deficit altogether, as compared to previous years, is on the downward trend. We've certainly shrunk the gap, but we do still, again, rely on unencumbered fund balance to balance that out. This slide works from the last slide where it effectively is breaking out the revenue. And so as in the previous slide, you will remember, and it ties to this column that you'll see to the third from the far right, the 2026 proposed budget, the $108,939,000 number ties. And so this gives you a breakdown of how you're generating revenue to the general fund. And I'd like to make particular note of the top three generators being sales tax, pass-through RPPTF, and property tax. Those three combined represent 59% of your total general fund. And I want you to remember that number because in a later slide, I'm going to compare it to something else. So those are your three largest. One, I think one thing to note in this revenue, as we've been generating it, sales tax certainly being your biggest. We actually looked at some growth figures to get a sense of how sales tax was trending. And over the course of the last 5 years, since 2021, sales tax is relatively flat. In fact, we've measured just under 1% growth over the course of 5 years on sales tax. And so sales tax, which will also correlate with Measure P in later slides, is fairly flat. And so in this particular year, you'll see a downward projection of 4%. And so we're hoping, obviously, things correct themselves in future years, but we're experiencing some flatness there. On the property tax side of the equation, you'll see a year-over-year comparison of 1% increase. Again, over the same 5%, we've seen a little bit greater of an increase over the 5 years. Going back to 2021, we've seen about a average 2.85% annual increase. So we're kind of flattening out on the property tax side. The pass-through is kind of a misnomer. You'll see a big number here in the sense that it's projecting a 17% increase. But this pass-through RPPTF, it is property tax, but this is property tax that is effectively residual property tax that's captured after the dissolution of the redevelopment agencies. So as redevelopment agencies have been going through the dissolution since 2012 and its debts are getting paid off, what's happening is once the debts are getting paid off from the Dissolution Act, there's becoming increasing amount of property tax available that then gets distributed to affected taxing entities. And so we're starting to see bigger shares of that coming in because the successor agencies effectively are paying off the former debts of the former redevelopment agencies. And so while you're seeing a pretty meaningful increase there, I don't necessarily think that's a good measure to use to compare as to what's going on economically in terms of property tax valuation. And so with that, there's another item on here just so that you're familiar with it is, but familiar with what it is. You've got the charges for services on here, and certainly you're seeing a year-over-year decrease in 12%. And to explain what that is, or what would be included in that number, we certainly see inspection fees, plan check fees, subdivision filing fees as an example. And that's reflective of a slowdown we're seeing, particularly in the residential construction area. Commercial and residential seems to be trucking along pretty good. But certainly over the last few years, we've seen a downward trend in the number of single-family homes finalized. And so while we're still projecting activity in this upcoming fiscal year, we're projecting about 350 units to be finalized. That's certainly what we're projecting is certainly less than what we have planned for in this current fiscal year. So we're budgeting conservatively in that regard. We're hoping, and you'll see a slide later showing all of the tracks and builders developing. We're hoping to be proven wrong, but we've taken a very conservative approach on that revenue forecast. But altogether, those would be a lot of what contributes directly to your general fund revenue as a source. Looking at the general fund and just kind of comparing it on a department-wide basis, this is how things break down. And so I'd mentioned in the previous slide wanting to have you remember that 59% number. What you'll see here is a pie chart that breaks down by department. And I'd like for you to compare it to what we define as public safety. And the product of the percentages for police, fire, and code compliance is about 57%. And so I think the point that I wanted to make is that your biggest shares, your public safety shares of the general fund are pretty close to consuming your three largest major revenue categories in the general fund. And so any swings, unexpected swings, certainly could impact our ability to depend on those three funding sources, which if that were to occur in the downward, then it would definitely cause pressure on some of the other departments in terms of the other departments being able to rely on the remaining funding sources to fund their operations. And so this slide is then attempting to translate the net income perspective, revenues versus expenditures, and then also compare it to our general fund reserve requirement. As you know, as a part of our fiscal responsibility goal, we have adopted a general fund reserve requirement of 17%, and we've programmed that in here. And so one of the things that I at least want to share with you, because we forecast forward and it gives you a sense of how we plan to achieve that goal over the next 5 years. And so on the revenue side, I think one thing worth mentioning is while we have $108 million proposed as revenue in this current fiscal year, that projects out to $113 million by the 29-30 fiscal year. If we were to calculate that rate of increase over that course of time, that's only a 1.1% increase, so fairly small. But if I were to do the same comparison on the expenditure line, the $110.5 million tracking out to the final year shown here of $125.49 million, that's a 3.4% annual increase. And I'm illustrating that only to remind you a lot of what we experienced back before we even pursued Measure P. This is not a unique experience for us or any other city, which is to say that our conservative revenue growth projections certainly don't match up with the data that we rely on to project out the expenditures. And so expenditures, very simply put, outpace your revenue growth. And so we watch this very closely. That's why we actually do this chart and places some of the importance in it, so that we can also figure out, hey, do we have an iceberg coming? Are we going to hit it, kind of thing? Or are we going to be able to continue on for a couple of years and continue to monitor and see if things actually play out the way they do? Nothing in this slide causes me to believe that we need to sound an alarm, especially when I look at the general fund reserve level as it currently sits at, or is currently projected to end at 56%. And even if we were to realize that deficit spend going forward, even at the 29-30 fiscal year, we're still projected to exceed your 17% reserve requirement. And so this slide is intended to illustrate as well graphically the reserve requirement versus the forecast. And I think the important thing to compare on this this slide here is knowing that the green line is your 17% reserve requirement. Not only projected at the end of this fiscal year, but projecting forward to the 29-30 fiscal year. And everything above that green line is additional cash. That's effectively free cash flow, I would call it, that this council, could use and rely on effectively to plan future goals. And this slide here is set really to graphically get you comfortable, or hope to get you comfortable with, again, the concept of balancing your budget with unencumbered fund balance. And so this is narrowly focusing on your general fund, but similar to the slide that we showed you earlier when we were looking at the entire citywide budget. The light green bar is your budgeted, your dark green bar is your actual, and so your actual expenditures are traditionally tracking less than your budgeted. And then the orange line above the dark green bar, the difference between the two, that's effectively your surplus revenue, because that orange line is the actual revenue. And you can actually see in the case of the general fund, your actual revenue has been performing fairly well compared to the budgeted revenue. And then again, on the general fund side, this is intended to show your historical expenditures versus the reserves. And I think the important piece here to focus on, despite the budgeted expenditures being the light blue bar, the actual expenditures being the green, same effect is occurring here, where the actuals are tracking less than your budgeted. But I think the important thing is to compare the difference between the yellow line and the purple line, because the expenditures are contributing to the difference between the two, which everything in between the gold line and the purple line effectively is surplus general fund money, which is above your reserve requirement. So you have room to spend there with budgets. And effectively that is what gets used and is relied upon to help bridge those deficit spend budgets that we're showing you. Okay, so now to focus on public safety, which, as you know, we define public safety as police, fire, code compliance, and animal control. They all work hand in hand, trying to accomplish bits and pieces, large and small, of the larger public safety needs for our community. And so with that, starting with the code compliance side, this kind of takes a dive into our code compliance department, and we actually have animal control serving as a division under code compliance. And I'm proud to say it because I've been able to witness it and see it over the years. This is one of a few departments where you've been able to see a substantial increased investment over the years in terms of its scope and ability. Before we had Measure P, the budget for code enforcement was just shy of $1 million. And so now, of course, between the general fund and Measure P, you're looking at a total code compliance department budget of about $8.8 million. And so that includes on the animal services side of the house, 10 full-time equivalents, and 8 part-timers, so 18 bodies on the animal services side of the house. You have 25 full-time equivalents on the code compliance side, and then we also have 5 of those 25 assigned to the homeless engagement team. Those are your boots on the ground. Those are the ones that are responding to any animal-related situation, abandoned animal. We've also expanded, as you know, and we'll touch on in a bit. We've expanded, obviously, into the sheltering business, and that's in part why that division has grown. But all in all, this is the division that this city has relied upon to really enhance its proactive approach to code enforcement, and allows us to actually respond when we ask folks to submit their complaint. We have a philosophy here to embrace the complaint, and it's the Code Compliance Department, among others, that really helps us be able to respond when we deal with those community-related complaints. On the fire side of the house, similarly, another department that we have made an amazing amount of investment over the years, especially since we started. We actually looked at data as to what the first budget was when we started up in March of 2019, and that budget was just a little bit over $9 million. And what you see here is a total expenditure budget of $27.4 million. And that is in large part due to not only Measure P, but due to us being in a position where we can actually, better size, right size our department, our response plan to the community, to where we're working towards all risk response. But we've been allowed to invest substantially in our medical response program, in our suppression program, by opening additional station, but by also adding additional response vehicles. And so the fire department has grown to a floor staff of 75 full-time equivalents, and by floor staff we mean the frontliners that are actually working the actual frontline equipment. That's going to be your engines, that's going to be your tiller, that's going to be your squads. And so that's 75 folks responding, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, responding to all fire and medical emergencies. We do have a support staff that's built up on the admin side of the department with 10 full-time equivalents, 1 part-time, which includes your fire chief, your deputy chief, your training battalion chief, division chief, fire admin manager, and an EMS team. And then on the prevention side of the house, that would be the folks that deal with the inspections, the plan checks, and so we have 6 folks supporting that division as well. A department that's grown, but certainly I would defend by saying it's a department that has had to grow to be able to properly respond to the needs of our community. On the police side of the house, you'll see a total budget of $47 million, $47.2 million. And as we talked a little bit about it at Tuesday's city council meeting, because we did have the Schedule A on the agenda, and the Schedule A is effectively the amendment to the overall contract we have with the county sheriff for the police services we have. We're including in this budget a $40 million figure to be able to have room to absorb whatever becomes the ultimate negotiated increase between the sheriff's labor group and the county, who's the lead on the negotiations. But effectively, that contract is getting us 103 sworn police officers. We also have a little over 43 full-time equivalents on the non-sworn, which also in that non-sworn calculation includes your office staffs, dispatchers, your crime analyst as well. And we've made a tremendous amount of investment as well on the police side. We haven't been able to grow the sheriff's side the way we have had with Measure P. Saying it differently, had we not had Measure P, we wouldn't have been able to grow the department by the 12 bodies that we've added over the years. And so effectively, we're responding to all level priority calls. That's your emergency calls, 1, 2, 3s, and 4s. We've also expanded on the SSS side, really with the intent to try to help boost our response times to other calls. And so with that, Just one change that we're noting, and we noted it Tuesday night. We are taking in the SROs that were assigned to Victor Valley High School in this upcoming budget year. I'm sorry, the Victor Valley High School District. And as we've shared with you before, the Victor Valley High School District is actually starting up their own police department. And so the actual deputies, the 4 that were assigned to the high school district, will be coming back into Victorville. They're actually taking on existing vacancies that we have realized, and that's important for us because just as you heard in a previous presentation involving fire and the vacancies that are being experienced at the fire site, it's not any different in the police sheriff side of the house, to where we're having trouble filling all of our vacancies fast enough. And so we'll be able to get 4 of them filled up once that transition takes place, which will help us get more bodies back out in the street attending to our local issues. So to touch on Measure P and dive into that, as you all know, Measure P is a transactions and use tax. And so technically different from the general fund sales tax that we get. It's calculated slightly differently. They don't match exactly. Even though the general fund generates 1% and Measure P generates 1%. The tracking that we have is that Measure P tracks at about 95-96% of what we otherwise generate on the sales tax, in large part because it applies to certain things. I'm sorry, there are certain things that don't apply to the transactions and use tax that would otherwise apply to sales tax. But anyhow, we're doing fairly well on the Measure P side that started collecting starting in April of 2021. Our current cash on hand position is identified at about $44 million. This upcoming fiscal year, we're projecting a $31.578 million revenue generation. That's actually being balanced against or matched against projected expenditure, including capital of $44,087,000, and certainly projecting an ND balance still in the positive of 31.54. Capital is projected to be about 7.9 million in this budget. And just I think it's important to note as well that one of the things that's in the cash flow of the Measure P is we do set aside a couple of reserve funds. And so 2 particularly, one is a police station reserve fund. We've been reserving $4 million a year since we began with Measure P, anticipating an ultimate need for cash to help defray some of the costs associated with the ultimate police department construction. And so this budget includes another $4 million deposit for that purpose. It also sets aside $775,000 for the fire department apparatus replacement reserve. And one of the things that we did similarly, just knowing that the fire department functions with very expensive, costly equipment. And so instead of waiting for the wheels to fall off an engine or a truck, we've actually set up this reserve fund so that when that happens, we can plan for it better. We don't necessarily have to subject ourselves to not having money available and then continuing to delay the purchase. It allows us to be a little bit more forward thinking in terms of being able to respond to the capital needs when it comes to the replacement of some of your more important equipment out in the field. And we actually established that number based upon a capital replacement plan where we've actually assigned a life to the various assets, consider the depreciation, and then of course with that depreciation it gives us a sense of when we need to potentially replace some of that equipment. So you do have a reserve fund being built up for some of those replacement needs of the fire department. And so with that, some of the highlights for the, on the expenditure side for Measure P, it's a budget that's going to continue enhancing traffic enforcement and reducing response times with the police department. It's allowing us to expand EMS, USAR, which is Urban Search and Rescue, hazmat through the fire department. It's going to be a budget that allows us to purchase new equipment for the Animal Care and Adoption Center to enhance animal care services. Infrastructure improvements at the city facilities and parks. In fact, we're actively involved in that right now. Check out Hook Park if you haven't been out there in recent weeks. You're going to see a lot of improvement, especially as we're getting ready for the summer concert series coming up. And of course, there's funds being relied on in this budget for continued police station design and fire department apparatus reserve, which I touched on. So this is what the forecast looks like for Measure P. And it also forecast taking a peek at how its surplus cash available, or its cash available compares to the Measure P reserve of 17%. And so in this particular case, similarly, when we looked at the revenue line of 31.58 in this upcoming fiscal year, we also compare that or project that out to 32.86. That's only a 1% projected increase in revenue over that duration of time. The public safety maintenance charge is something that I want to continue to discuss with you so that you're aware of it. But what this effectively is doing is helping share in the inflationary costs for the general fund. One of the concepts and one of the concerns that we had been dealing with since the Measure P was adopted is recognizing that as we add bodies to all levels of public safety, one of the things that we were sensitive to wanting to avoid is having Measure P, continue to invest in bodies that support the services, and not have the general fund be in a position, especially given the deficit spending situation that he had, have the general fund actually keep up and maintain the original levels of services. So saying it differently, using police as an example, in the sheriff's contract, if we had at the time, say, I'll do the math really quickly, 96 sworn deputies as an example under the original contract, and it was a $29 million budget. We know that the inflationary prices every year are going to continue to go up, and they're going to continue to go up, outpacing that 1%, general revenue increase. And so one of the things that we wanted to avoid is a situation where Measure P was healthy and Measure P was able to afford the addition of bodies under the Measure P equation, but the general fund not be able to keep up, and put yourself in a position to where, okay, what effectively do you do? Do you cut back on what you can actually afford in terms of service level on the general fund, or then do you start unfairly assigning general fund bodies to the Measure P? And so the public safety maintenance charge is a concept that actually allows us to try to balance out and help the general fund be able to afford some of those inflationary prices. So the Measure P public safety maintenance charge isn't picking up 100% of that inflationary, and it's something that we analyze every year. But we try to bring some balance as to what the general fund can afford in terms of that imbalance that takes place between the revenue growth and the expense growth. And hopefully that makes sense. But then with that, what you'll see dropping to the bottom, continuing on with the expenditure side. And so in this particular case, the expense line we show at $25.1 million growing to $22.2 million. In outer years, we haven't programmed in capital because we haven't been able to see capital that far. And so without that, we're looking at an increase of 1.5%. Still, the point there is that expenses do grow at an outpaced rate than what the revenue growth is. This slide is intended to look at your Measure P reserve requirement and forecast that forward. And I think the important thing here to see is that, of course, the blue lines are representing your Measure P reserve amount. So that's the amount of cash in the aggregate that's sitting there. And so there's that $36.3 million number. Everything above the green line. The green line is your 17% reserve requirement. So what this chart is showing you is that you do have a pretty meaningful amount of surplus cash above your reserve target line. And again, similar to previous slides, that surplus amount of money is what's used to actually support the deficit spend to help address those especially those projects where you have carryover years. So now we'll start diving into some of the enterprise and special revenue funds. And we touched on them a little bit earlier, but now we're going to kind of share with you some of the summary of what you would see in the book if you open to the respective tabs. And so first starting out with the sewer sanitary fund, which is fund number 425, and you'll see a revenue projection of $32.9 million compared to an expense of 28.7. And so that's actually showing a surplus revenue generation there. And one thing that it's important for you all to know is in the case of sewer, like some of these other funds, they all operate relying on a rate study and a rate plan that helps identify the cost associated with operating, maintaining, and investing in a system, in this case the sewer system, over a 5-year period. And a rate plan typically looks at and aggregates that cost of service and then divides up the cost of that service to a number of different user classes, whether it's a residential user, whether it's a commercial user or an industrial user, and there's subcategories to each of those. But effectively, it spits out a rate. And that rate is what gets charged to the customer. It also projects rate needs in forward years. And so in the case of the sewer rate plan, we're going into year 3 of that 5-year plan. And that rate plan that this council had adopted actually calls for a 6.85% rate increase for the sewer rates. And so that is what's programmed to help achieve that $32.9 million. I know you see a $4 million surplus there, but if we were to pull out the rate plan, you'll see where the rate plan actually projects deficit years, surplus years, in large part to be able to plan for and be able to afford some of those big capital spend years when they're taking on big capital investments or capital improvements. On the solid waste side, similar in the sense of it being rate plan. This is your trash system where you depend on Burtech to do the hauling, but we do effectively the billing. We contract the hauling. We also have a number of other responsibilities related to it, but that's a 33.5. Almost a $33.6 million revenue projection against $30 million in expenses. The solid waste has a variety of rate increases proposed, depending again on customer class. Your residential rate increase is 6.1% in this upcoming budget, and that's factored into the 33.589 number. SLAD, you saw this Tuesday night. The Street Lighting Assessment District is proposing a 8.5% rate increase. That's actually taking the unitary charge from $22.38 a year to $24.28 a year. And I call that out because 8.5, as an example, is a number that sounds like a big rate increase. But when you look at the actual unitary charge, we're talking really $2 over the course of a year. So not significant. In the case of the Victorville Water District, we're in year 5 of our rate plan. So you will see probably during this fiscal year a new rate plan coming. We typically lead off with a capital plan, I'm sorry, a master plan that identifies all the capital. Once we have all the capital, that'll plug into your rate plan. And so you'll expect to see a new rate plan, and we'll have workshops to deal with that. But similarly, this rate plan for the water district calls for a 3% rate increase at year 5. And so we're carrying that recommendation forward in your $61.2 million revenue projection. And then finally, on the VEMA side of the house, we don't have any rate increases proposed for electric or natural gas. And I think there it's important to recognize where we're providing electric services to customers at SCLA and at Foxborough. We're currently tracking at about 18.2% less than SoCal Edison's rate, and that's benefiting our industrial customers at those two locations. So one of the things that we did this year, and we hope you enjoy it, is trying to do as much possible to really connect this budget to your strategic plan items. And so this slide is intended to highlight some of the ongoing projects that tie to your strategic plan. And so projects that we should expect to see complete this year. Of course, the library for us is getting a lot of attention, and certainly are expecting towards the end of the year to be able to step into that new 17,000, almost 18,000 square foot facility. And it's an expanded facility to the library that we currently have. Also, we'll be taking on additional improvements at the Animal Care and Adoption Center in this budget. And I think it's important to know that since opening the center, the Adoption Center has demonstrated measurable impact through hundreds of adoptions, rescue transfers, and community supported initiatives, strengthening our commitment to responsible pet ownership and the public service. These would be some of the examples I kind of touched on earlier, carryover type projects. So we'll consider them as ongoing projects, but certainly what you saw in the current budget when we adopted it, that is getting carried over. We're making progress, just haven't been able to get them started on construction in this fiscal year. But Roy Rogers Drive from Amargosa to I-15, that's being carried over. That's about a $1.8 million project relying on SB1 and Measure I funding. It's a project that's going to include pavement rehab on Roy Rogers and a median east of Civic Drive. We're actually planning to carry over Ridgecrest Road from Bear Valley to Paiute. That's about a $2.3 million, similarly including pavement rehab. Those two projects, just to give you a progress update on those, we're actually trying to get those two projects bid out as one project to try to be able to enjoy some economies of scale, since the works on those are fairly similar. And so we should be advertising those projects very shortly. And we're actually hoping if we can get those things advertised late summer, early fall for the start of construction for those projects. So those are coming near. Mojave Drive, as well as one of our other majors, we're actually in the process of undergoing the design of a storm drain. And so we're hoping to advertise that by the end of June, and with a start of construction closer towards the end of the year. And so that would be the stretch of Mojave Drive from Amargosa to the I-15. We're continuing on with the plans to expand our industrial wastewater treatment facility out at SCLA. As you know, we do have our own treatment facility that's capable of handling both domestic and industrial waste. It was largely constructed to be able to support industry out at SCLA. And we're currently in this budget planning for the final design phase which is about a $3 million cost, and it'll be a project spanning this fiscal year and the next fiscal year. But ultimately, it's a project that will expand our current capacity from 2.5 million gallons a day to 6 million gallons a day. One of the things that we also did was to try to take this budget and tie some of the expenditures by strategic goal. And this illustration is actually kind of sharing with you how much is actually being invested in infrastructure. So many of our strategic so many of our expenditures are tying back to these categories. Public safety is the second largest of the expenditure by strategic goal. And to kind of break it down a little bit, just so you can kind of see each of the strategic goals. Strategic goal A being the financial sustainability. On the finance side, we depend on professionals as well to help us get through the year. As you know, we recently reported the first time in many, many years where we've had a clean audit, but also a clean audit with no findings. Of course, we depend upon outside services to help us, put together the audit, but also help us with the internal auditing as well. And a number of others that help us with calculating revenues, also reconciling and even securing revenues. On the IT side, you'll see a number of system expenditures there, investments in systems. And then on the code compliance side, you'll see some collection services planned for. Public safety, this budget includes public safety expenditures on the fire side, police side, and the code compliance side. Touched on police. On the fire side, you'll see about $1 million for things such as mobile and portable radios, power loader for the squad. That's the power gurney. We actually, as a part of the 3 being delivered, we actually bought 2 power loaders for those 2 that are in service. And so this budget will pick up the 3rd to outfit that additional ground transport capable squad. SCBA washers, tiller portable lifts, and capital reserve for the replacement plan, which we touched on. Code compliance, you're going to see continued development on the animal shelter, flooring, exterior paint, drive approach, air circulation systems, hot water systems, masonry walls. So we're going to continue to expand or upgrade, I should say, the facility that we've taken on there. And then, of course, you've got a listing of IT-related improvements needed to keep our systems running. Community and economic development, you'll see some expenditures on the economic development side, the business development side. Old Town Streetscape project is probably the big one that we just kicked off, where we actually have a design team now on board to actually look at developing a streetscape plan along 7th in the Old Town area, which would also include a circulation plan to put back on-street parking, reduce the through lanes to 1 in each direction, and perhaps even a roundabout to circulate traffic away from that area that doesn't necessarily want to go through that area. Reducing homelessness, we've seen, of course, tremendous success there. We've actually seen our numbers go down. I think we're now 4th instead of being 2nd with the largest homeless population in the county. So we're making progress there, and that's in large part due to the investments you all made in the wellness center. This strategic goal actually shows planned expenditures to continue the operation going. Of course, the funds will be used are a variety of different funds. And then also Measure P is relied upon to serve as that backstop for cases where some of those funds that we're depending upon primarily to fund the operation, if they don't pan out, then of course we've got some backstop funding with Measure P to keep that operation going. Strategic goal E is invest in infrastructure. The airport is continuing to invest in its facilities and equipment. One thing that I'll call to attention, because it's something we intend to move on, is providing some additional security, especially in the southern parking lot area of City Hall. And so we actually have programmed some money in to enclose that with some type of block wall and or wrought iron type fencing system. We have had issues in that parking lot, especially overnight. And so that'll help provide a little bit of additional security to that area. We've got planned on the fire side a new fire mechanic vehicle. This will actually be a vehicle that our mechanics will actually be able to jump in and actually drive out to the stations. There's certainly situations that we've experienced where taking a fire apparatus, whether it's an engine or a truck, to the yard is not possible or time consuming. And so we've actually identified an opportunity where it's probably for a number of different types of maintenance reasons more effective to actually get our mechanics mobile in a vehicle, properly equipped, and actually going to the stations and doing repairs at the stations. And so that's what you'll see with that particular line item. And of course, we're making some station improvements as well in this budget. Continuing to invest in infrastructure, you'll see a number of engineering-related items, traffic signal, UPS replacements, pedestrian system upgrades, road improvement projects. Mojave Drive we touched on. 3rd Avenue is one we haven't, which will be a roadway system that gets attention. Citywide pavement preservation, and that would be your annual citywide slurry. Haven't exactly identified the streets. We're still working on which streets would actually see the slurry out of this fiscal budget. And so that will be forthcoming. Council will ultimately see it when we award the contract. And then VEMUS has a gas main line extension planned as a part of its investment in infrastructure, along with exploring capacity upgrade project over at the Foxborough Industrial Park. Public Works and Water, you've got a number of improvements there as well. Playground equipment at Verde Park, and it's actually under Public Works because of Public Works handling the maintenance assessment districts. You've got a number of other improvements here, block walls through at 6 well locations, Mojave Drive improvements, along with reconfiguring of ground well piping, excess recycled water bypass, and reclaimed water system missing links out at SCLA. That's one thing that we do intend on doing out at SCLA, especially for the areas that are already plumbed. There's a lot of private development out at SCLA that's actually plumbed purple pipe for their landscaping. And so what this missing link project will do is actually start connecting from our existing backbone system. Some of those lines will actually start taking our feed to those existing systems, tying in some of those landscaping areas. That way we can broaden the use of our recycled water. Strategic goal F is communication and outreach, and so we have here listed a number of items. Certainly, the new library is going to require furniture, fixture, and equipment, and so we've got monies budgeted to basically outfit what the inside of that is going to look like. We've got a number of citywide outreach events, and as many as we do, it's kind of surprising to see how much it is, but it is quite a bit to be able to put on these events. Certainly very valuable in terms of us using these events to better connect with our community residents. Summer reading program, of course, on the recreation side, you've got a number of other activities there, including the Festival of Lights, Spring Festival, Veterans Parade, and so forth. And then goal G is our organizational effectiveness and sustainability, and we do have funds in this upcoming budget programmed on the human resources side to deal with a classification study. That's something that's underway as we speak. That's effectively a study to look at all of the job descriptions that we have here in the city. It's also interviewing the employees and getting their account of respective duties, comparing the two to determine if in fact we have employees classified properly in positions. And so that's an ongoing and that's a carryover project. Tuition reimbursement is something that's a part of our benefits resolution package that's included in here. This also includes the continuation, which would be our third year of the college intern program. And then citywide, to call out the investment we're making to help build an effective and sustainable organization. Got a tremendous amount of investment being made on the training and education side. So that's webinars, conferences, training, certifications, and all associated expenses. So with that, that's how we tie a lot of the expenses to the strategic plan. All right, dealing with personnel and the organizational part of the budget is another big key piece. And a lot of what you're going to see here is already programmed into the budget. So all of the budget expenditures that are proposed are considering what we have here as recommendations for salary and benefit to the employees. And so this budget does include a recommended 3% COLA for the non-represented employees. It also includes what's contractually obligated under the MOU with labor of 3%. And so effectively a 3% COLA for all employees is what this budget includes. That 3% COLA for all employees costs the city in totality about $1.56 million is the net cost on that. It also took a look, her staff took a look at the cost of benefits. And as we all know, the cost of health insurance particularly is continuing to go up. And so we actually looked at both what we reference as Fringe A and then also the Fringe subsidy. And so Fringe A currently is $950 per employee, and that number has been established really with the intent of trying to be able to provide a sufficient amount of money to the employee to pay for the individual employee health costs. And so that's effectively how that number is attempted to track. And as we're seeing the increase, and we're also projecting additional increase, we won't really know next year's costs until October of this year. And so we've kind of got to factor in, based upon what's been experienced, what are we likely to experience in October when the rates come out for the upcoming calendar year. And so with that, this budget recommends a $50 per month increase to the Fringe A, taking the Fringe A allowance from $950 to $1,000 per month. And that could be used towards the medical, dental, and vision insurance that the city offers. The Fringe subsidy is a partnered program with the employee, effectively, where for matching amounts, and that's how this Fringe subsidy works, is effectively we match the cost of insurance above Fringe A, so that the employee, to the extent they need to employ, they need to employ or get health coverage for the employee plus one or the employee plus the entire family. We actually have a subsidy program where we're matching the amount that the employee's coming out of pocket above the Fringe A amount. And so with that, this recommendation that we have here for you actually takes the Fringe subsidy from the current amount of $800 to $1,000, increasing it $200 a month. And that's a 50%, again, a 50% match out of pocket. The cost of those two programs, the $50 per month Fringe A subsidy, costs the city $282,000. Interestingly, the Fringe subsidy by increasing it $200 only costs the city $89,767. So combined, those two recommendations are proposed to cost this budget an additional $372,000 in the aggregate. There's some other areas we're just trying to keep up with costs. This budget does recommend an increased safety shoe allowance for those that require it as a part of their job duty, increasing the shoe allowance, boot allowance, as it's commonly called, $100 from $225 per fiscal year to $325 per fiscal year. That's got a net impact to the city of about $31,000. Also, what's proposed to be written into the benefits resolution is a new concept called a mandatory rest period. And what this is intended to do is basically compensate employees that are required to rest as a result of them having to work extended periods of time. And what I mean is we've actually run into situations, and especially with some of our crews that get called out, whether it's a traffic collision or it's a road closure attached to something more serious, such as a homicide. I mean, that's probably an example of something that would require a call out from some of our public works crews. And because there's an extensive investigation that goes along with that type of call, when PD calls in, we'll have folks get called out that are on the standby crew where they just got done working their normal shift, get called out and have to sit on a scene for an extended period of time that could be 8 hours or more, but then also have to work their shift the very next day and potentially even have that call out encroaching into their shift at the very next day. Employees, we found, it's in rare occasion, but in instances, we found employees continuing to work through it all. And so we ultimately had a decision to make as to whether or not that's in the best interest of the employee from a health and safety perspective, but also is that the safest thing for us as the city in terms of having somebody that's potentially tired out there operating heavy equipment in the public right of way. And so one of the things that we did to try to encourage employees, take a break, despite the fact that you just got called out, is to put this type of program in place where there's a mandatory rest period. And so effectively what this program does is for employees that get called out and find themselves having to work consecutively 18 hours, to the extent they have to work 18 hours. Once they get to that 18-hour, they're required to take a rest period. But then also allow them to get compensated their normal wage, because what we don't want them to do is feel like they can't, we don't want them to feel like they can't work their next shift. Because of course that has a connotation of not being able to earn the wage associated with that shift, but interestingly, lose out on the potential for overtime as it relates to the overtime calculation. And so it's a program that we believe will actually encourage people to take care of themselves and not feel disincented to take that break when they really need it. And so that's one program that we think will be helpful, especially for those crews that get called out and potentially get subjected to extended periods of time of work. And then also we've got a modification to our enhanced shift we're making a modification to the shift differential, and we're just broadening it so that the shift differential pay, especially for crews that are working less desirable shifts where they have to work those shifts and it's not their routine shift. A classic example is your streets crew, the signs, the crew that actually is out doing the signs and the markings and the paintings. They're traditionally used to working a daytime weekday shift, but certainly as we're approaching the summer hours, we're getting into the paintings, the markings of the streets. Those crews get forced into working nights because that's when it's best to apply those works. And so similar to others that we've extended differential pay to, this would effectively provide a 5% additional benefit to their earning when they're working in those periods. Since we talked about COLA, certainly wanted to share with you what the history has looked like for us, and what this is really showing you is that we have tried over the year, very traditionally, to track as closely as possible to the CPI. This CPI, as we measure it from March to March of every year, and we use the San Bernardino Riverside Ontario MSA for the measure. This year's CPI came in at 2.5%. We ran scenarios at 2.5 and 3. Wanted to certainly have an opportunity to have all employees being able to enjoy the same benefit as the represented. And so that's why we brought forward the 3% recommendation based upon the fiscal health of the city. This actually breaks down, well, first it summarizes the total number of positions currently and as projected in the upcoming fiscal year. And so the delta or the change year over year, this budget proposes a total full-time equivalent count of 570 employees. That's up 10 from the current fiscal year. And just looking at it through, your meaningful changes are you certainly have one position add on the building side, 3 position adds on the city management side. Community services is going to see 6 position adds. You'll see a big difference between engineering and public works, and we'll touch on it in a future slide, but there's an organizational realignment where we're realigning some staff that's currently under the engineering department. They're going to be moving to the public works and water side of the house. Human resources is +2 on the position add. And IT is on the +1 for the position add. And so altogether, what you're seeing is position summary is 18 new positions, 1 deleted position, 2 range changes, 13 title changes, and 15 are title and range changes. This is to share with you how we've grown over the year, and despite the position adds, we've taken our total position count and certainly compared it to the population growth. Victorville is still a growing city. Over the course of since the 2004-2005 fiscal year on there, that's actually a growth rate of about 2.9, almost 3% of population growth. Over the last 10 years, we've been growing at about 1.3%, but over the last 5 years, we've been growing at 2%. So the population growth is seeming to be on the upward tick. And with that, you can see how our total position count compares to position counts over prior years. Certainly, we're not at the highest. The highest, I think, is back in the 2007-2008 fiscal year at a little over 600, almost 650 employees. This budget does include a couple of organizational changes. So the one that I was alluding to involving engineering and public works, the traffic maintenance division will be moving over to public works, reporting to our assistant director of public works. And that's actually reorganizing or realigning 14 positions to the public works side. And so that's where that change is. That division, physically, the largest part of that division physically is in the courtyard over by public works. So we believe it'll actually help facilitate better attention for the crews. Certainly also believe it'll free up a lot of the work responsibility that goes into supervising that crew. Our engineering department is taxed pretty heavily, and so we certainly have a goal in mind with this change to be able to free up our engineering department from some of those responsibilities. Also, we're actually looking at, especially as we're anticipating being able to take on some more directed redevelopment effort in Old Town with Acrea, preparing for that and envisioning that. This budget includes also a realignment to actually add to the city manager's office of economic development by bringing in homeless solutions and aligning homelessness solutions with our economic development and housing efforts. And so those positions will be coming over and reassigned from planning. It's not going to be immediate. It's going to be a transition that takes a little bit of time, but there is one position add in this budget that's going to be important to be able to ultimately facilitate this transition. And then we're getting close to the end here, but typically what I like to do now that we've kind of baked through all the numbers is give you some perspective on the forward look, which is to suggest what is on the horizon. And so we've identified for you projects in the planning review or recently approved. And so we're still seeing some commercial activity. There's 3 projects up here that we note. The Pollo Campero, which is building on Mariposa Road in front of the Vallarta supermarket. That's on that exterior pad, basically right up against Mariposa Road. Pad that I don't know why it hasn't developed years ago, but it's finally developing now. Raising Cane's you've seen under construction here, not far from City Hall, and just on Amargosa Road, north of Roy Rogers. Just go outside, you'll see the big giant crane. They're constructing a 2-story medical office building right there at Amargosa Road in Midtown. We're seeing industrial activity as well. You're going to see the American Jerky Company under construction, a 238,000, almost 239,000 square foot industrial manufacturing warehouse. That'll be on the southeast corner of Hesperia and Nisqually Road. And the American Jerky Company, they actually manufacture, I believe it's a chicken-based product for the pet food industry. So they'll be for animals. SCLA is still expecting to see continued industrial growth, 1.1 million square foot building at the intersection of Phantom Road and Turner Road. And then also the Ottawa Business Center is anticipating the construction of a 996,000 square foot warehouse on the north side of Ottawa, east of Hesperia Road. And so that would be just north of the existing Nutro plant. And despite the downward projection that I touched on earlier, whoops, did I skip here? No, I did not, just realigned here. I did touch earlier on some of the downward projection on the residential side. That's not to overshadow that you have 6 tract developers actively preparing to build in 10 communities throughout your city. And so recognizable names as well, D.R. Horton, Evergreen Homes, Pacific Communities, Legacy Homes, LGI, and Richmond American. So I think the positive takeaway, despite us projecting a downward tick in the residential construction trajectory, we're still seeing building. Things haven't stopped. And so I think that's still a positive sign. We see some in the planning review or recently approved. We've got still quite a bit of hotel activity. Avid Hotel is constructing an 87 room hotel. Hampton Inn is constructing a 119 room hotel. Holiday Inn is working on an 87 room hotel on Talpa and Mariposa. And then we're anticipating a Residence Inn along with another unnamed hotel at the site development on Dos Palmas and Highway 395. I encourage you to call me and take you out there. So I'd love going out to the airport and showing it off. The success that we're seeing out there is just amazing. And encourage you, if you haven't seen it, watch 60 Minutes from this last Sunday. Give you certainly a sense of how interesting things are, especially with us being involved in those kinds of projects. But we're seeing a 98% tenancy at the airport, an interesting position to be in because it's actually causing us now to start being creative and visionary about putting to use sites that we hadn't thought about developing previously due to cost. But the airport is fiscally in a very healthy position and capable now of being able to make investments and start planning for new development. And so we're actually in this budget looking to map for future development along Readiness and Phantom West. That's a stretch of roadway that we're definitely seeing as opportunistic to have some new development in there. We're also anticipating the bringing of a 54,000 square foot warehouse building really to produce more revenue for the airport. That would be building 520. On the off-airport side of the house, we're still expecting Covington to break ground on the first of 3 large warehouse buildings, the first one being just over 1 million square feet. And we're going to decorate the airport in this upcoming budget a little bit by having a new monument sign right out there at Phantom and Air Expressway. And then finally, as we're really getting to the end here, I'm actually put this slide up, and this is a slide that I've put up similarly, and I put this slide up because, as I can confidently tell you, things in this city fiscally are well. You're in a good cash position across all funds. We've been able to attribute a tremendous amount of success to Measure P. And I put this slide up here just not wanting us to get too comfortable with it all. Because certainly there are a tremendous amount of needs that we haven't talked about, but certainly needs that I can certainly see in my crystal ball, if you will. You will see a new presentation in August. We've been doing it a couple years in a row now for you. Freddie will actually be preparing in August an update to the roads assessment, the citywide roads assessment. And one of the things that we do, and it's how we've derived this $176 million number, is we've actually opened up the black boxes, we've called it, and we've looked at the citywide road rating, and we've actually translated that into a cost in terms of what would it cost to be able to improve our roadway system throughout the city to a more acceptable level. And so in this particular case, achieving a road rating of 70, we'd call that acceptable. It's not as good as 80, but certainly better than what we have. And so just to get it to a satisfactory rating of 70, it's almost $180 million. And that presentation that he gives you in August will show you that $180 million just can't be covered by the limited amount of Measure I and gas tax and SB1 money that we currently get. And so we'll continue moving forward with that presentation, but stormwater improvements is something that's just not been in the cards for the city over the inception since it was first incorporated. Stormwater is something that's been neglected altogether, and so we attempt to deal with stormwater related improvements when we can, but there just isn't sufficient funding mechanism for stormwater improvements. There's a few others on here. Of course, we made the presentation to you earlier in the week about the police station and Civic Plaza. Certainly showing you the cash flow that you just saw. I think it's safe to say Measure P is not going to be able to sustain a police department as a part of its go forward. All that to say that there are a substantial amount of improvements that I've laid out here on this slide that still require a funding source. And so we've got a lot of work to do. It doesn't have to be tomorrow, but certainly I put this slide up here because I believe this is a conversation we ultimately need to have and ultimately need to have so that we can work towards some kind of game plan to start tackling some of these issues, which we hear from our residents as some of the loudest complaints. And so with that, I'll just talk through the next steps. We're certainly here and available for any detailed questions you have regarding what's in front of you. This would be an opportunity for the council to provide feedback to any additional items you may see fit or want to see included in the budget. Certainly, with that, staff will evaluate and incorporate any additional request, and then it's our goal to bring back for June 3rd, the final product, where in a public hearing setting, we'll actually present to you a final budget for your approval. And so with that, Madam Mayor, that's all I have.
Wow. Madam Clerk, will you read the recommendation?
Sorry, my screen's taken up. There is no action required at this time. It is recommended that the City Council discuss and provide direction for staff regarding the proposed fiscal year 2025-2026 budget following the presentation from staff.
Okay. I'm going to advise council, since there is no action, we're going to take the 2-minute question and answer period and the comment period. We're going to combine them for a total of 5 minutes. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and start with Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, first of all, Mr. Metzler, kudos to your team. Well, number one, stellar presentation, Mr. Metzler. I can't even imagine how long it took you to work on that to deliver it as smoothly as you did. Kudos to your team. I know that this took months and months of preparation, and I'm sure that when this is all said and done, you're going to have a lot of requests for vacations if you don't have them already. So I'm going to ask some questions that are a little bit all over the place, and then I think I'll tie into some other ones. But well, let me start out with this, and I think I've said this every year since we first began working on a strategic plan. I felt that that was so critical to how our city functions, that we do need to have that blueprint. We did need to have our mission, vision, values, and goals, and so that we had kind of this guiding force to go forward, so that we're not distracted through the year by every shiny thing that comes along, right? And it helps us to know that this is our plan. We have strategies to meet our goals, and we there's steady plotting throughout the year to reach that. The fact that it all marries so well with our budget, I think it makes our city come across as very professional, very solid, very stellar and transparent to our community. And I think that that has a lot to do with the reason that we are in the good shape that we're in today. So again, hats off to you and your team. So given everything that we've heard, and especially since we know that our population is going to double in size, let's say in 20 years or less, and the infrastructure slide that we just had, and all of the things that we're going to have to deal with, right? Is a 17% level for reserve still sufficient, do you think?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. A good question. I certainly appreciate the question because it means you really care about our ability to be able to operate. It's also a health indicator, I believe. We do analyze that, and some of the logic that went into how we established that was analyzing the cash of the respective funds. And if we're talking about the general fund for a second, one of the things that we saw when we analyzed the flow of cash for the general fund is that there's peaks and valleys during the fiscal year as to when the cash is actually coming in. Using property tax as an example, and you saw in this budget again for the second year, property tax combined with RPPTF being actually greater in the aggregate than sales tax now. But you take a revenue source such as property tax, which may not come in the fiscal year. We may not actually receive checks until, say, starting in December, and then we might receive checks for property tax through April. I guess my point is, you take a major revenue source like that, and you're starting out your fiscal year without that. And so a lot of the logic that went into establishing the 17% reserve, and we actually increased it from 15%, you'll remember, is we wanted to do everything possible to try to prevent the general fund from having to do an internal borrowing from other funds during those periods of time when the revenue wasn't coming in at an equal pace to the expenditures. So that's a long answer, but I wanted to describe it, for everybody's benefit, the public. At this point in time, and we do analyze it. At this point in time, we don't necessarily see a need to change the 17%, but we do continue to evaluate it to make sure if there is a need, then we'll certainly recommend it.
Terrific. All right. When we do the rate plan, the rate studies, is built into that the projected needs for capital improvement projects? That's a completely legitimate thing to do, correct? In fact, it's the responsible thing to do.
Absolutely. And in fact, we really can't even begin on the actual rate plan itself until we actually complete that master plan. And the master plan is going to identify a lot of things, but an important factor is going to be what is going to be your capital improvements over the next 5 years. And if we're talking about water, does that mean you're building more wells? Does it mean you're building more reservoirs? Does it mean you're building more pipe? What are you going to build over the 5 years? And so until we know what that 5-year physical plan is going to be, we don't have anything to plug into that capital line item that would be in your rate plan. So master plan first, and then once we have that, then you roll into your your rate plan, which does factor in capital improvements.
Okay, and then toward the end of the presentation, Mr. Metzler, you talked about that there's going to be a position that will need to be added to help with the transition. And I think it had something to do around the time that you were talking about the homelessness solutions thing going to the city manager's economic development area. Can you give us an idea as to what that is?
Yeah, that position add is a position that's called an economic development administrator. And so it's planned in this budget to be an assistant director level position, effectively responsible for overseeing those economic development functions, including the homelessness group, the CDBG planning group, and reporting directly to the deputy city manager over economic development, which currently is Mr. Tony Camargo.
Okay, and then on the issue of the whole, in my mind, and I'll just be blunt, the warehousing fiasco with legislation and kind of the cleanup language that we're supposed to have we built in anything into the budget to deal with some new, and I don't recall the name, I'm sorry, but we have to modify perhaps one of our elements? Is it have we built anything in?
The question is, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hadegui because I didn't dig that deeply in, but I think the question is relating to the warehouse bill that Carrillo moved forward in the last legislative cycle, where we're required to modify our circulation element.
That's it. Thank you.
General plan, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Metzler, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Jones. We haven't built anything into our budget proposal from the planning department side. We do have a grant application out currently with Caltrans that would include a circulation element update. If we're not successful in that, though, that is something that staff can prepare at the staff level. Okay,
perfect. And then I just have to ask this because it's been some months, and I remember visiting a fire station. I want to say it's at the fairgrounds, and the kitchen there for our fire department personnel was really in dire need. Are we attending to that for them?
I believe so. Mr. Camargo's the one that runs point between myself and the fire chief. We have a number of improvements at the station. You want to first address 311, but then talk through some of the others?
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So the project that you're referring to is at Station 311. And we are underway. We've ordered some of the appliances already, and some of those improvements will be new countertops, new flooring, new cabinets. So that's anticipated to begin in the next probably month or so. The facilities department is just finishing up a couple projects,
Okay.
and then they'll wrap that project up. Further, we're making some improvements at Station 314 that will allow for an extra restroom that will be compatible for both genders. And then there's another project we're working on at 314 that will improve some of the flooring as well, just because of the carpet. Obviously, there's a lot of frequency, a lot of call volume in that station, so that will replace all of the existing carpet at Station 314. And then in the upcoming years, we'll phase those stations out to replace the carpet and tile as needed.
Okay, perfect. And then, so looking at slide number 19 on fire, have we allowed anything, because we just heard not too long ago from our fire team about being able to recruit and being attractive, being able to retain our very important public safety officials. Have we built anything into that so that we're in a good position to negotiate when it becomes necessary? Generally.
I think you're talking about preparing for the MOU negotiation, is that?
Yes.
And so, Ms. Barber, because the MOU expires in probably June or July of 2027, we're going into the negotiation year, probably starting this time next year. So do we have anything programmed in this year, or would it be next year's budget that we program it?
So yes, thank you, Mr. Metzler. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members, council. So the MOU is through May of 2027. And then we have it built into our budget actually this year to start a salary study around this time next year. That will give us about a year before it expires. So we'll start negotiations around that time.
But we're planning for that, knowing that
Yes.
we don't want to be at the last minute saying we got to beef up the nut, right? Okay. Thank you so much. And then on slide number 27, I always thought our water fund was a little healthier than it looks here. Am I just,
Slide 27 is just showing the deficit spend for the fiscal year. It's not actually showing you the bigger picture of its cash.
Got it.
And
Got
the
it.
water district is one of our healthier enterprise funds.
got it? Okay, and then trying to run through this. And then I just want to draw attention to slide number 30, especially on the first two arrows on the pavement rehab projects and how important it is, the Measure I monies that we receive and how helpful it is to our community. Measure I is set to sunset in 2040, and there's an effort underway to consider whether we're going to bring that before the voters and see if the voters are interested in that going on in perpetuity, not an increase, but just continuing on. So just wanted to highlight some of the important things that Measure I does accomplish for our community in particular. And then on slide number 36,
Your time is up.
thank you. Thank you,
If
Mr. Messler. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
if I might, just on the SBCTA item, just as an update in that regard, SBCTA has requested, and we are going to accommodate in session of the second meeting in June. They've asked to do a presentation about that exact issue, anticipating the need to talk about it and plan for the ultimate renewal. So expect something from them, second meeting in June.
Terrific. Thank you. Again, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Godin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, at the very beginning of your presentation, which was wonderful, by the way, so thank you for that, you mentioned unencumbered funds. And I just wanted to clarify the definition of those. My understanding is that that would be prior year's funds that were left over. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would fit in, yes.
Okay. And then I did want to have a question regarding the slide 14 for the general fund. It shows it's reserve slowly declining into 2030. We see the same pattern on slide 25 when it comes to Measure P slowly declining. Specifically for slide 14 in our general fund, do we have a plan to curb that decline?
We don't have an exact plan. I'll tell you some of the things that we're looking at, because I mean, the deficit spend first, is the need is to understand why. And so, you know, we talked about the structural imbalance, the expenses outpacing the revenues. We are going to be looking at things that work towards either bringing additional revenue source into the general fund. If we go back to, bear with me, there was a slide that had all of the revenues. There it is on slide 11. One of the things that we're going to be looking at in an upcoming, in the upcoming budget year, franchise fees, for example, that's actually something we're evaluating to determine if, first of all, in fact, we're getting all the monies that are owed to us, but then secondly, are there opportunities there to be able to generate additional revenues? We're actually going to be looking at as well an update to our cost allocation plan. That's an example where it's very likely that the cost allocation charges from the general fund probably haven't been keeping up or charged out at the same rate of expense as others. So we'll be looking at updating that. There's going to be a few areas that we're going to be looking at to see if there's ways where we can change the trajectory of the revenue line so that it slows down that deficit spend, if that makes sense.
And would you say that we somewhat allow for an overestimate of the expenditures and then an underestimate of revenue to help offset that?
It kind of just happens. I'll give you probably one of the better examples. And so we touched on the capital expense, but another example of where the expense side likely is budgeted high is on personnel. You know, when we talked about, and we recently saw the presentation from Ms. Barber involving the hiring process, the number of hires, how many we can actually accomplish during the year. And so, you know, just as we in this budget have position adds, we're not filling those positions on day one, you know, and we try, especially in this budget, to only include what we think we can reasonably accomplish in the 6 months, but still, or at least until mid-year, but still, we're not hiring those positions on day one. And so while we're budgeting 100% of the personnel cost, we may not hire one or all of them until maybe 3 months in or 4 months in. And so that would be an example to where you're not realizing the actual cost until, say, October, November. And so that's another area that, and it happens routinely with this budget to where you budget a higher expense than what you're actually going to incur, just because, you know, the process of filling those positions just isn't fast enough.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, Councilmember Jones asked part of my question regarding slide 37 again with the fire department. So I think we got our question answered as far as upgrades goes. I did have a question as far as growth. Are we planning for any potential new fire stations or expanding any of our current fire stations to meet the demand?
Not yet. However, we are close to being done with the service study for the fire department. You guys have a term for it. I'm sorry. Standard of cover. And so we've actually undertaken a standard of cover. The study is close to being done if it's not already done. And that's effectively evaluation of everything with the system. It's looking at the stations, the station locations. It's looking at the response times. And so ultimately, it's going to spit out a recommendation as to exactly answering your question. Do we need to plan for another station? Do we need to plan for additional companies at the existing stations? And so we're waiting to finally review all of that report. Once we have that, then we'll actually bring it back and share it with the council. There's going to be things that we probably can act on quickly. There's probably things that we can, we're going to have to plan and perhaps plug into some of our strategic plan. We have a strategic plan coming up in 2026. And so that probably, I'm expecting to see things that we're going to expect to have to add in and plan for the building in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Metzler. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for those questions. Mayor Pro Tem Harriman?
Thank you. Thank you. Keith, I just got a couple questions. First of all, great job, staff, great job. All this is above my pay grade, okay? But a very good job and easy to understand. So a couple of my questions were already answered. I have a question on the general fund major revenue sources and in regards to the sales tax and property tax for the 2025 actuals. Why are those numbers so much lower than 2024 and the revised? The sales tax and the property tax. The property tax is almost, looks like $10 million less than the actuals in 2024.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and I should have called attention to that because, yeah, that's a big, it looks like a big catch. But in the case of sales tax, we actually receive sales tax after the fact. This is likely only reflecting 2 quarters of sales tax collections. It's very common for us to finally get the total collections for the current fiscal year after the fiscal year ends. And so we'll typically book back probably in August and even September, the final receipts that we get for this fiscal year, we'll book them back. And so we're always tracking behind on sales tax receipts because we're getting them after the fact, probably 2 quarters after the fact.
Would it be fair to say, because I get this question a lot, when people complain that we don't do this or that, we all know what everyone complains about. But I like to answer that question with the fact that our other cities in our county have very much higher property values, so they bring in a much higher number for property taxes. Does each individual city get a different number from the county grab?
It's all over the board. What I can tell you is none of us receive the same share. In Victorville's case, we're getting about 16 to 17 cents on the dollar. There's neighboring jurisdictions here in the high desert that don't get close to that. There's certainly jurisdictions in the county that get more than that. So kind of depends a lot on your history as a city, when you first started, what you were able to negotiate when you incorporated, kind of thing. So yeah, there's not a lot of consistency on the actual pass-through amount to the local agencies.
Is that pass-through amount, is it ever change, or is it locked in place?
It's fixed.
It's fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, then my other question is, the sales tax is down. Is that because the high desert as a whole is developing more, and so not as many people are shopping in our city? Now they have the ability to shop in their cities?
No, I think it's more a reflection of what's going on in the economy. I mean, there's 2 calculations that kind of factor into it. Obviously, what's sold here locally, and so if it's situs based and it's a transaction that takes place, sales that actually takes place, we're getting those shares. And if you were to look at our major categories, I'm not exactly seeing a lot of shift towards other jurisdictions. And then online sales, and there is a mechanism to be able to capture online sales and bring it back to Victorville as generated here. So I think more so what we're seeing is more so just a reflection of the economy and the behavior of folks in slowing down their discretionary spending.
I've had a conversation with another city manager recently, and he spoke about the possibility of a shipping tax that would generate, say, 50 cents for everything that's shipped from Amazon. Is that something that is feasible or something that could generate a large amount of revenue for our city?
I don't know enough about it yet. I do know that it's likely something that's going to have to be approved at the state level. I think I am certainly taking a wait and see approach. I know they're considering it, or last I've seen, when I monitored that same issue that you're talking about, they were actually contemplating something like that in the state of Colorado. And so it's something that we're going to monitor, but I think effectively what they're trying to do is collect, basically to help supplement road funding based upon the transition of sales to e-commerce and the dependency of the roadway system, probably increasing to provide delivery of retail goods.
And then on the project highlights, we're looking at replacing the sidewalk on the east side of Ridgecrest. Isn't that Spring Valley Lake? Page 30, Ridgecrest Road from Bear Valley to Paiute Avenue and Roy Rogers Drive. But I'm talking about the Ridgecrest Road. It says the east side. Isn't the east side Spring Valley Lake? Okay, our retired public works professional has told me that's ours.
It's right there by the Sterling Inn, from the church to the Sterling Inn,
Oh.
down to the school.
Oh, okay. There is a carve out that is ours, yes.
Okay. That's pretty much all I have. Again, this is a great budget. I don't know if I'm just paying attention better this year than last year, or it's a better report. But I just one thing I would like to say, I'd like to tell people there's 150,000 people in this city, because I know for a fact that's got to be true. With all the people that are here that the census doesn't get, I'll just put it that way. But now we're at 141,000, correct?
Gonna be.
That's correct.
All right, and yeah, again, good job. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, that's okay. Again, you took my questions, but we'll leave it at that. Mr. Metzler, to you and staff, thank you very much, guys. I've seen a whole bunch of these. I've seen at least 36 years worth. This is one of the best ones, and it broke it all down, easy to read. I thank you and staff for taking care of the employees of everything they're getting. I like the mandatory rest period. Also for the safety shoes and everything, how they've gone up in price for them. Thank you very much on that. I will, two things. Is there any way to go back to the table over property tax?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And then, our new fire stations, are they put in automatically into new housing tracts that are being built, that we require so much property to build a fire station?
Not automatically. We do collect a development impact fee similar to the collection for future parks. There is funding being collected to help defray the cost of either property acquisition or construction or both.
Okay. And believe it or not, out of everything, what I'm getting at, eucalyptus, in the binder you gave us, Eucalyptus Street is going to be a CIP. We're going to go out to bid, do conceptual drawings to extend Eucalyptus because they want to put in a new crossing.
That is something that we're very much interested in looking at, and it's just that, the conceptual, to figure out, the possibility of it. One of the things that we're experiencing, obviously, is population growth in the southern part of the city, with increased dependency on Bear Valley Road to get to the I-15 if that's where they want to go. We're also seeing added potential for traffic, potentially even being diverted through Victorville from 395, even though there are plans to widen 395. We're seeing, a huge amount of growth in that area, and so another east-west connector, basically getting from the 15 to 395, we believe is desirable. And so we do have that in some respect as eucalyptus, but we do have a physical barrier to complete that connection all the way through so that you do have a direct connect from 395 to Amargosa, which I'll call I-15. And so, yeah, we do want to study it. We don't have a lot of additional projects that we have envisioned for our major local highway program for Measure I, but certainly believe that would be a good one to qualify if we can make some logical sense of it.
And thank you. I did read SBCTA would be behind it. Are we still paying for the La Mesa Bridge and the Ridgecrest Bridge? And the Bear Valley Bridge? Are we still paying for those?
La Mesa is paid off. Bear Valley, we don't have any debt on. Do we still own Green Tree, or we're paid off on Green Tree too. So, no, we don't owe any funds further to SBCTA for those major projects.
So we would be it would be a new project for us with them to go forward on these drawings.
That would be a project as if they were to move forward with an attempt to renew Measure I, I definitely expect them, actually they already have reached out trying to get a sense from us what projects would be needed if Measure I were to be renewed. And so that would be an example of something I definitely could envision including if it were renewed.
Thank you, sir. This is great to see that you and staff is looking forward to this to upgrade the whole entire high desert. Because like you said, this bridge, if it were to come to pass, would help not only Victorville, Hesperia, and also get through from Apple Valley. But thank you very much to you and staff. Guys, great job. Great job. Good to look at. That's all I have. If you have anything else you'd like to comment to finish with, Mr. Metzler?
No, it was a thought that escaped me while I was talking about it, but also to stress the importance of that connection of eucalyptus to Amargosa. One of the other areas that we believe would be of huge importance is on the public safety response side, whether it's police or fire. Just seeing the increased dependency again of traffic on Bear Valley Road, the traffic that exists on 395, to move east and west, it definitely slows our response capabilities down. And so futuristically, we're believing that beyond just making it easier for the residents in that area, it's certainly an important piece to help improve our larger public safety response as well.
Thank you, sir. If we have nothing further, then
Madam Mayor, I do have a request, though, for something to be considered into the budget. That was part of what the ask is this evening.
okay.
Thank you. So I would, Madam Mayor, ask for consensus direction from the council for the city manager's office and his team to consider moving the Veterans Memorial to somewhere on Civic Drive, whether it's the new Civic Park or somewhere between the courthouse and City Hall, something where that can be incorporated into this one big idea of our new civic area.
Don't have a second, so we'll move on.
It's just a consensus direction. It's not a motion in a second.
And my thing is, then what does it leave down there for the sports complex? That would be
For consideration, and I'm asking the council for consensus to just have it be considered in the budget, whether it's feasible.
hold on. Go ahead.
I would also say, I agree with that in that if we're going to do a roundabout down there, that's right where the roundabout's going to go. I don't see the memorial being able to withstand a roundabout unless you put it in the middle of it, and then no one's gonna stop and look at it. So I think the new Civic Plaza with something like that would be a better place for everyone to participate in seeing it. I understand that takes it off of Route 66.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman, are we getting away from what this is about, the budget?
Request for the budget consideration.
I think it's fine.
Go ahead.
I'm done. Thank you.
What do we do now?
So just take a consensus of the council to determine whether they wish to direct the city manager to look at considering the Veterans Memorial being moved to Civic Drive as part of the budgeting process. Is there a consensus from the council?
We have two members.
I'm gonna, it needs to be, there's a sports complex going in down there.
So I would just ask or add to that, if we're looking at revitalizing downtown, is there not value in having it down there as opposed to moving it here? And it's just an honest question.
No, I don't want to get into creating an agenda item here. I'm just asking for it to be considered in the budget and have staff look at whether or not that's a feasible move. That's all. It's not a done deal. It's staff determines whether it's a good move.
Okay.
I'm
I was
okay with
looking at just feasibility also.
Yeah. Yes.
So the consensus here today is to have staff look into considering, as part of the budgeting process, moving the Veterans Memorial to Civic Drive.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The time. What do you got? So am I. And time is 7:19, meeting's adjourned. You just voted to move it. You just voted